Welcome to People Doing Good for Others. Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we praise and celebrate and honor those who truly make significant contributions in our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm grateful to be with you today. I want to thank Wilkes Communications, RiverStreet Productions, and 100.9 WIFM for this sponsorship. Our featured guest today is Lieutenant Jana Hayes. She's a 27-year veteran of law enforcement. She grew up here in Wilkes County and graduated from Wilkes Central and Wilkes Community College. She's a leader with the School Resource Officer Program, which are law enforcement folks involved in our spending the day at the high schools and the junior highs, and a one rover. She's dedicated to making a difference in our communities and helping youngsters and families. So thank you for being with us today, and good morning to you, Lieutenant.
Good morning.
Tell us about childhood and growing up a little bit and how you eventually found your way to law enforcement.
Well, I did grow up in Wilkes County. I'm a 1983 graduate of Wilkes Central High School. Like a lot of youngsters, really didn't have a clue what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. Didn't think about law enforcement at that point, but I went to school for a year or two, took some business classes, and that really wasn't what I wanted to do, so I got a full-time job in a factory. In a factory, and worked for a year and a half. And I realized at that point that was what I didn't want to do either. So I somehow got interested in law enforcement and started taking some classes at the college. It was really, really interesting to me. So
is that basic law enforcement? No, were you in that?
Well, this was actually the curriculum part of the college.
All right.
But before I finished my associate's degree, I went ahead and took the basic law enforcement training course, which is the basic course to get you started in law enforcement.
Okay.
I did that.
What did you do when you first entered that career in law enforcement? What were you doing?
I was employed with the Wilkesboro Police Department.
Okay.
Worked there for about a year and a half. Went to North Wilkesboro Police Department, where I was soon promoted to detective at that department. Stayed there for around 7 years. I then went back to Wilkesboro Police Department around 1995, and that's where I was assigned to Woodward Middle School.
Okay.
Through the
As an SRO?
Yes, sir.
All right.
As an SRO through Wilkesboro Police Department. At that point, there were deputy sheriffs in each of the high schools, in the 4 high schools, and then I was employed with Wilkesboro Police Department, and I was the SRO at Woodward.
Okay. Tell us about your family, your husband and children. Will you do that?
Yes. I've been married for 26 years. My husband is also in the law enforcement related field. He's actually a magistrate here in Wilkes County.
Okay.
We have 2 sons, a 22-year-old son and a 15-year-old son,
Okay.
who is a freshman at Wilkes Central High School.
Okay. So it just gets in your blood, kind of, something that you just really look forward to each day. I guess there are different experiences every day, but so tell us about who's Dane Maston?
Dane Maston was the sheriff before the current sheriff, Chris Shue,
right,
who's the sheriff now. Dane Maston was the sheriff that hired me back about 14 years ago to be the SRO at West High.
Okay.
Dane, well, really helped me, encouraged me.
Encouraged you.
Encouraged me
That's a wonderful tribute.
in law enforcement. He taught a lot of my basic law enforcement school.
Yeah.
Because that's taught by law enforcement officers.
Okay. And that's at the community college?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. And he was very encouraging. I'd always been friends with Sheriff Maston before he hired me in 2004.
Okay. So when did, in some of my preparation for the day, I read that the school resource officer program started in the 70s, maybe in Flint, Michigan. Can you bring us up to speed here about when it started and how many officers we have today and the ins and outs of that career?
Sure. Our program in Wilkes started around 1995.
Okay.
And that's when we had, Wilkesboro Police Department had one officer to cover the middle school, which was inside the city limits. And then there were 4 deputy sheriffs, one at each high school, and their responsibility was to cover that particular district that they were in. So, you know, when the new middle schools were built, I believe in 2002,
Okay.
that alleviated the officer at Woodward.
Yeah.
Because at that point Woodward was no more.
Right.
So,
Lieutenant Hayes, let's start with why we do it. Why you have you said that you know that what you're doing is self-satisfying. You have a passion to do it. The impact is significant. Pull all those things together in this wonderful opportunity that we have, and just tell us, you know, what is it about being in law enforcement that inspires you to be the person you are?
as a law enforcement officer, you know, you want to, you get into the field because you want to help people.
All right.
That's your main objective.
Okay.
And, you know, wouldn't it be a great thing to change the world?
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
because that's how you feel when you're young and you're motivated and you're all into it. Then you figure out, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to change the world, but I'm going to hopefully make an impact on someone.
Right. So you become an influence. You become a role model when we're in our schools. So again, let's share with our folks today that are listening and watching about how many schools have officers, and there are 10 of you total. Go through that again.
Well, up until this last school year, the school year we're getting ready to wind up or wind down, we had just had 4 SROs, one in each high school. Their base would be the particular high school, but the responsibilities would be their middle school, their high school, and their high school. So, you know, when the new middle schools were built, I believe in 2002, that alleviated the officer at Woodward because that's to cover that particular district that they were in. So, you know, you get into the field because you want to help people. You know, wouldn't it be a great thing to change the world? You know, because that's how you feel when you're young and you're motivated and you're all into it. Then you figure out, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to change the world, but I'm going to hopefully make an impact on someone. Right. and all of their elementary schools that were in that particular district. Well, a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, the county commissioners, the school board, Sheriff Chris Shue got together, and they figured out that we needed to do a little more than what we were doing. We were hearing more and more about school shootings. These school shootings were happening in small town USAs, right, just like Wilkes County.
Sure.
And, the mentality of that doesn't happen or that won't happen here in Wilkes, we started thinking about that a little bit. Right. Maybe it could happen here.
So they're willing to invest, if you will, involve more of you to be responsible in those positions. So now we have 4 in the high schools.
Yes, sir, and we have 1 in each middle school.
Right.
And we also have what we call a roving SRO, and his responsibility is to visit the 13 elementary schools, not only visit, but implement educational programs. He's more of a, not so much an enforcer, but a preventive,
okay,
educational type position.
So he actually go in the classroom and do teaching and things of that nature?
He certainly does. He'll go in and maybe talk to a kindergarten class about exactly what a law enforcement officer does.
Right.
Or, in the high schools,
yeah,
those SROs, they go into the classroom and they speak about constitutional law,
wow,
amendment rights, your rights, all kinds of topics.
All right, we talk about certain attributes of these individuals that are there during the school day, moving around. You talked about them being visible, accessible. How about cover those 2 attributes, if you will, about a school resource officer?
Sure. Well, the main objective, being a school resource officer, first and foremost, we're law enforcement officers.
Okay.
We're not security guards.
Right.
We're employees with the Wilkes County Sheriff's Office. We're not employees of the school system. So our responsibility is to enforce the laws of North Carolina. But we're also there to be a resource.
Talk about, I was so interested this morning in my final preparation, resource. Now, go there and talk about being a resource.
Well, we're stationed at the school. We're a resource for students, for teachers, for staff members, for administration, for parents.
Yeah.
We're a resource for everyone that has anything to do with the school.
It provides safety. Is that a good way to put it too?
Yes. We also, not only safety, but we provide, law enforcement counseling, things of that nature.
Could you do CPR type things if something happens?
Sure, we
All
could.
right. Yeah, that's part of it.
Sure, we could. We certainly could.
Okay.
Just being a public servant, serving.
Great description.
Serving not only the students, but the
community.
The community, absolutely.
Yeah.
The staff members, the teachers, the administration, they all want to be
So
safe.
a resource officer is a very versatile person.
Absolutely.
Who has wears a lot of hats, administers a lot of duties, and is willing to to get involved. Would you say being involved in the school is an important part? Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. And our SROs, they take ownership of their school.
Oh, that's a
They
great
really
word.
do. They certainly do. You know, we are there to enforce the laws, but we're there as encouragers
Okay.
and cheerleaders. You know, we want our sports teams to be the
Some of you are-
winners.
Some of you are involved in sports coaching, is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of our SROs are football coaches, wrestling coaches, and they do this all in their spare time.
Really?
It's something that they don't necessarily have to do, but they want to do. They want to be involved with their school.
Talk about locked doors and how important that is and this constant moving around.
Well, you think that's a no-brainer, that that's something that always happens. All the doors are always locked. It's always secure. But that, we know that's not the case.
Right.
One of our responsibilities, our daily routine, is to make sure that the doors are secure, windows are secure. The people that a lot of the schools now have like the high schools and elementary schools have a buzzer system. So making sure the people that are actually buzzed in the building go to the places that they're supposed to go to.
I was in Moravian Falls last week, and I'm going to follow the rules, and so that was that my name would be typed in, to take my picture and give me a sticky badge that I put on, and stated my purpose for being there, and I was really impressed with that. I of course want to be an honorable guest, and follow the rules. So tell us what we would like to tell every person that's watching us today, that they're welcome in the schools, but to follow the rules. Tell us how does that's the responsibility to check in,
Yes,
sign
sir.
in, right? Isn't that right?
Yes, it is. That's correct. I'll take for an example, in a lot of our elementary schools, we have, and middle schools and high schools, we have parents who volunteer, who spend a lot of time at our schools just helping teachers. And, they're still held to a certain level to come into the school, check in,
Yeah.
go through the security system
Sure.
that you just
Right.
described, and follow the rules just like everybody else.
And they also insisted that I check out. Checking in was one thing, but the accountability is that guy came into school, where is he? And so they know that as I left, that I'm no longer on the campus. I shouldn't be wandering around somewhere and without my badge.
Correct.
Is that right?
That's correct. And if, let's say, you'd stayed a little bit longer than maybe they thought, they'd have probably come looking for you.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Good. So we're involved in the education process and prevention of the bad things that have happened, and so I'm really impressed that our county commissioners would sense the importance of what you do, and that more is better, and that we'll have folks on duty to protect our communities and our children and families.
Absolutely. Just the mere presence makes a difference. Our patrol cars being parked in
Yep.
front of our schools, that is definitely a deterrent. Not to mention our response times to incidents that we do have,
Yeah.
that we do get called for at the school. So in this case, more is definitely better.
Yeah. Lieutenant Hayes, we also, I want you to talk about training for your officers and that you meet every month. Go through that. That Sheriff Shue is always involved in that meeting,
Absolutely.
the monthly meeting. Talk about what goes on there.
Well, we do try to meet every month at the sheriff's office. It's always after school on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and Sheriff Shue's usually always there, as well as other members of our command staff. And we just sort of go around the room and talk about things that's happened in the school. Maybe some things that we've had to take enforcement on, whether it's a particular drug that's making our way in our school or close to our school, or it just makes everybody be aware of what's going on. And lots of times
reminders.
Yes, sir.
About this is a checklist, and let's make sure we are doing these things.
Absolutely, because more than likely, if it's happening in one school, it's happening in other schools. So that just keeps everyone informed. And we talk about the things that maybe we've had to make arrests on, but we also talk about, Sheriff Shue wants us to talk about the good things that are happening in our school.
Wow. So let's talk, I want you to make sure you spend some time with being a role model, being in proper dress code and being on time, and the examples that our wonderful officers present for children. Talk about how we have an obligation to be above normal, to be up here, be respected and held in the light by our youngsters. Talk about that.
Well, we, as well as all law enforcement officers, we are held to a higher standard.
Yes.
And in being in school, you're being observed all the time by people you don't even realize or that are watching you. So, especially to smaller children, you want to be.
You're there to help.
You're there to help them. You're not a bad person. You're the good guy.
Right.
And we want to make sure that they know that.
Right. And
the great thing about the SROs right now, they're all accessible, they're all personable, they're all approachable. They have an open door policy. You can go talk to them anytime. Lots of times the administration will contact them after school hours about things that maybe they feel like the officer needs to be aware of.
Yep.
So it's a job that's not just 7 to 4. It's we're on duty all the time.
So our leadership role is about that students want to be confident in the officer, want to have the courage to, if they're being bullied, to let somebody know about it, or that they can trust the officer who's there to do good.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. That's always the goal. Yeah. That if the officer is needed, that they feel like they can go talk to them.
Yeah.
And as well as, the other staff, teachers, administration, you want them to be able to come to you if you're needed.
You made another point about being outside and to be able to recognize when there's something unusual. You do it every day, and you see our officers see cars parked at a certain. All of a sudden, there's something that's just not customary. Talk about that recognition, if you will.
Well, and that's all a part of being visible, being accessible, always being where the majority of the school population is. Whether
talk about that.
Whether it's the lunchroom, accessible out in the open during breaks.
Changing classes that you be visible.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And in these situations, you tend to see things that are not quite normal. The law enforcement officers tend to have those instincts when something's not quite right. So we tell the officers to always be where the majority of the school population is.
Thank you for that. Always be, if there's crowds, you want to be near it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. I'm a big fan of Sheriff Shue. I called a friend who called Sheriff, and within a matter of a day had us together. And Monday came over to your office, and we had a little chat. I like that responsiveness and being able to get to the man, and I know that the sheriff is he's on the right side of things. Tell us about your that great feeling we have about working with and for Chris Shue.
Well, Chris Shue is definitely a wonderful man. His door's always open, and when you sit down and talk to him, you're talking to a friend, not just your boss. Mm-hmm. That's one of the greatest things. Sheriff Shue has been involved in law enforcement for a long, long time, and he knows it. He knows law enforcement. And, he's passionate about the SRO program.
Yes.
He's a father.
Yep.
He has had children in the school system, as do I. We all do.
Right.
So, we're all passionate about our children and keeping them safe.
Right.
So, when I have an idea or maybe a problem, I'd just go talk to Sheriff Shue, and we figure it out. And
how about training your officers? Is that I'm sure there's certain standards when they start, and training, I'm sure, is an ongoing process.
It is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
We do actually have SRO training. They're required to go to a school. Which covers the basic aspects of being a school resource officer. We go through rapid response training, active shooter training, because if an incident happens at our school, the SRO they're responsible
Right.
for going in and taking care of the threat.
Right. Threat. Wow.
So, that's a huge responsibility we have. It's one of those things you hope you never have to do, but that's the first question Sheriff Shue asks you when you have interest in being an SRO. Could you go in to school if there was an active shooter and take care of the threat?
Wow.
Sometimes that's a little easier said than done. It's pretty heavy when you actually think about it.
Lieutenant Jana Hayes, you've honored us today, and we've learned so much about the role of the SRO, the school resource officer, that he be or she be involved, to be a part of the good, not to be perceived as catchy, but as an encouragement that we're here to help and to prevent. And I want to thank you for that, and to thank Wilkes Communications and RiverStreet Productions for this opportunity. It's been so good that I've had this opportunity, and I want to thank you for being here. Lieutenant Jana Hayes, the leader of the Wilkes County School Resource Officer Program, sharing her vision and her hope and her care for our communities and our schools and children. And thank you for being with us, and we want to see you for sure the next time. Thank you very much. I'm Gary York, and what a blessing to be with you today.